what's up guys, Benny and Sam here and welcome back to Xbox On. With the 4th generation of Xbox very nearly here, it seems like the perfect time to look back a bit. A whole lot has happened in the 2 decades since Xbox was first a twinkle in Microsoft's eye. So we've dug out the history books and unearthed some red hot facts and trivia. Now, let's do a deal. If any of these are news to you, you've got to smash that like button. And I'll be honest with you, some of these, even we didn't know beforehand, so strap in and get prepared for all those future pub quizzes.
First off, let's talk names. Do you know why the team behind the OG Xbox decided to go for the 24th letter of the alphabet? Well, the console was originally known as the DirectXbox, after Microsoft's game programming tools. Of course, DirectX is still around today. It's the technology powering ray tracing on the Xbox Series S and X. One of the names being thrown around before release was the 11X, and internally the project went through a ton of potential acronyms, including Mind, Mega, E2, Verve, and Mark. Mark! It stood for Microsoft Action Reality Center, but still, Mark!
And speaking of codenames, you probably know Scorpio, aka the Xbox One X, and Scarlett and Lockhart, the next-gen consoles, now called Xbox Series X and Series S respectively. But what about Trinity? That was the original codename for the Xbox 360 before the team realized it was already taken by another Microsoft project and switched to Project Xenon instead, which was also the name of the console's CPU. Then there was Zypher, aka the Xbox 360 Elite. Kinect was also originally shown at E3 2009 under the name Project Natal, after the Brazilian city where its original creator was born. And back when Xbox One was still in the developer kit stage, it was codenamed Durango, which is also the name of a town in Colorado, a state in northwest Mexico, and also a 1999 Hallmark made-for-TV movie about a cattle farmer. Take your pick.
And if you've ever wondered how green came to be the trademark color of Xbox, apparently it all came down to stolen pens. When Seamus Blackley, co-creator of the first Xbox, was on IGN's podcast Unlocked back in 2015, he revealed all.
Is because a guy called Horace Luke, when we had to have a logo for a meeting or something, he had one of those awesome sets of markers, you know, with the paint tips.
Right.
You know?
A nice artist marker.
Yeah, and so everybody immediately stole all of them, right? The only color he had left was like the green nobody wanted. And so we made all this artist stuff with green, and now it's like still green. And I find that bizarre. I mean, can you imagine? 'Cause it's like Horace and the green marker, and now, you know, on buses in foreign countries. What? It's crazy.
The original Xbox was first unveiled all the way back in 2001 as part of Bill Gates' keynote speech at the CES Electronics Show in Las Vegas. But Big Bill wasn't the only one on stage for this pivotal moment in gaming history. He was joined by a certain Mr. Dwayne Johnson, back when he was still going by The Rock.
But today isn't about me, Rock. It's about the future of video games.
It's just a shame they didn't get Dwayne back for the reveal of the Xbox One X. It would have been a great chance to reprise his role as the Scorpio King.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Yeah, I might want to use that sometime, Bill.
Sticking with the OG Xbox for a minute, if you've ever owned one and ever left it running on the dashboard, you probably remember hearing some seriously spooky sound effects in the background. We were left wondering what those noises were, but in 2014, Major Nelson finally revealed the truth, and the answer is just as spacey as you'd expect. They were recordings of actual NASA chatter from the Apollo missions that were treated and run through a synthesizer, just to give them that added creepy edge. As for why, well, that remains a mystery, but I'm guessing it was to make sure everyone remembered not to leave their console idling next time, lest they get abducted by aliens, and maybe more reason why the Xbox is green after all, come to think about it.
Okay, let's leap ahead a generation to 2005 and the very first game for the Xbox 360. In terms of being the first 360 disc ever manufactured, that honor goes to Call of Duty 2, and the very first one off the press was gifted to developer Infinity Ward as a memento. And new 360 games were still being made as recently as October 2018, with the release of Just Dance 19. That's an incredible 13-year life cycle. Whether Xbox One will be able to break its record, we won't know until 2026. So, see you back here then?
If you're a Gears of War fan, you might remember RAM as the name of the first game's big bad. But for the developers at Epic, the real enemy was RAM, as in random access memory. Epic Games VP Mark Rain told the story in Major Nelson's podcast all the way back in 2006, and it goes something like this. When they were making the first Gears, the Xenon, the early version of the 360, remember had 256 megabyte of RAM, but Epic was convinced they needed to double that to do right by the console's CPU and GPU. So they prepared a demo of Gears running with the planned amount of RAM side by side with a version that used 512 megabyte, double the amount. The difference in graphical quality was shocking, and it was enough to convince the execs it was a worthwhile investment. Hey look, why don't we let Mark tell the rest of this?
And then I got a call from the chief financial officer of MGS, and he says, I just want you to know you cost me $1 billion. And I said, no, we did a favor for 1 billion gamers.
So, if you've got fond memories of how games looked back in the 360 era, now you know who to thank.
And whilst we're talking about the development of Gears, here are a few nuggets from the original's very long development period. See, the game started life as something very different indeed. A class-based multiplayer game similar to Battlefield, but with mechs. The game was put on the back burner around 2001, and by the time the project was revived, it transformed into the series we know and love today. One of the great things that did carry over between the two versions were the game's main enemy, known as the Geist, German for ghost. But when a game called Geist was released in 2005, Epic decided to change the name to avoid confusion, and lo and behold, the Locusts were born. And one final bonus fact for you, in Gears of War's single-player campaign, the final bullet in a magazine is 25% stronger than the rest, just to give you an extra chance at a last-second turnaround. Nice.
Okay, it's probably time we skipped ahead to the current gen and talked about the Xbox One, specifically the controller. When Microsoft were working on their next console after the Xbox 360, they knew that when it came to controllers, they were trying to improve on something that most people agreed was among the finest of all time. In the process of finding the right design, they made more than 200 prototypes. And when it came to testing new controllers, Microsoft pushes each button 2 million times to make sure they'll stand the test of time. That's considered to be equal to around 7 years of typical play, or about 1 week in Benny time.
You might know that every Xbox One S and X console is engraved with a little message, "Hello from Seattle," referring to Microsoft's home base in Washington. You'll find it on the right-hand side of an Xbox One X. If you've got a One S, you'll need to flip it over because the message is hidden on the bottom. But that's not the only place you'll find the message. If you open the compartment on the back of your controller, you should find it tucked away behind the batteries. Go on, go and check. We'll wait right here.
These aren't the only Easter eggs included in the Xbox One hardware, but we can't advise you go looking for these next ones yourself because they're engraved right on the inner workings. Whether you've got an Xbox One S or X, there's a tiny Master Chief hidden inside your console. As for his whereabouts, that depends on the model. On the One S, you'll find little old John on the optical disk drive bracket. For the Xbox One X, the cartoon is etched right onto the console circuit boards. And a neat little nod to the codename that we mentioned earlier, he's riding on the back of, well, what else? A Scorpion.
And while we're talking Master Chief, there's a whole universe of Halo facts out there. Like, did you know the game was originally announced in 1999 by Steve Jobs? Back then, it was going to be a third-person action game for Mac. And before even that, it had started life as a strategy game. So in many ways, Halo Wars feels like coming home in a roundabout way. And even after we switched to that first-person perspective we know and love, Halo still nearly went in a very different direction. Because during development, Bungie decided to cut the iconic multiplayer entirely. Luckily, a dynamic duo of developers made it their personal mission to resurrect the mode, and so one of the greatest multiplayers of all time was born.
And skipping ahead to the sequel, one of the most iconic E3 moments of all time was when Peter Moore unveiled the game's release date via the medium of his own skin. This was at E3 2004, back when Peter was the head of Xbox, long before he became chief exec of Liverpool FC. Gamers had been waiting years for more Halo at this point and wanted to know when they could get their thumbs on it. So the big man wanted a way to prove that when they revealed the release date, they really meant it. So PT took to the stage, lifted up his sleeve and revealed a Halo 2 logo, and then the words November 9. And yep, the game did ship that November and sold 2.4 million copies in North America in the first 24 hours alone. That's equivalent to a mighty 125 million in sales, making it the biggest launch day of any game, movie or album in retail history to that point. You will never game alone, I guess.
I'm a little disappointed Phil hasn't picked up the mantle.
That's true.
Of tattooing his body.
Does Hufford still work for us?
Hufford is still there.
So
yeah.
Huff Daddy, Phil needs a tattoo, brother. Get him a tattoo.
You might think you've got an impressive collection of achievements, but can you call yourself a Gamerscore millionaire? The first person to claim that title was a man from Tennessee called Ray Cox, or as he's known to the gaming world, Stallion83. He first appeared in the Guinness Book of World Records back in 2010 with the record for the world's highest gamer score, and Xbox awarded him a lifetime Xbox Live Gold membership in 2013 at the launch of the Xbox One. But it wasn't until 2014, after 8 years of serious gaming, that Stallion83 broke the 1 million mark. It was I Like a Challenge, a 50-point Titanfall achievement that eventually put him over the top. But Stallion83 wasn't willing to rest on his laurels, and he cracked 2 million in November 2018 with the help of the Halo 2 Anniversary Edition in the Master Chief Collection. That second million took 4 years, but he's slowed down a little since then. Right now, his score sits at 2,155,000, so the third milli is a little way off just yet. Maybe that's one for next gen.
Speaking of which, we recently got our first official look at the Xbox Series S, but you might have actually seen one as early as June without even knowing. That's because Phil Spencer had one tucked away on his bookshelf when he did his Game Lab 20 video interview with the New York Times. This event took place on the 24th of June, and the console cropped up in at least one more interview since with iJustine. But no one clocked this cheeky sneak peek until Xbox revealed it this month, proving that the Series S really is the smallest Xbox ever. He might not have a tattoo to show it off, but Phil Spencer certainly knows how to do a reveal in style.
So there you have it, 15 fantastic facts about Xbox to amaze your friends with. Be honest, how many of these did you know beforehand? Let us know down in the comments and see if you can take the crown as the world's leading Xbox expert. If you're not subscribed to Xbox On already, check out the channel and be sure to turn on that notification bell when you subscribe so you don't miss a single video. We've got deals, Xbox Game Pass reveals, and plenty of news about what's next for Xbox. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. Bye!